I'm Jazmyne Moreno of the Austin Film Society, and you're listening to the World is Wrong podcast.
Can you do a good Angelina Jolie impression?
I don't even know what that would mean. What does she sound like? She's a white lady. I don't know.
No, just a white lady. Man, the charisma. I'm swift becoming an Angelina Jolie fan. Her earliest and her most recent, Those Who Wish Me Dead film is.
Yeah.
She's just.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything with her in it other than Hackers. I think that might be it.
Well, okay. Well, sorry. Let's do this. Sorry. Okay.
How do you tell me how to say it, and I'll say it. I can mimic well. How to say Foxfire. So,
you got to make your lips
huge,
soft, and big, and then just.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about
Foxfire. Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films and film artists the world is wrong about. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Andras Jones.
And I'm the other host, and my name is Brian Connolly.
You had a hard time getting that out there. You've been drinking, celebrating your big win at the Prison City Film Festival. Brian?
No, I was trying to do Angelina Jolie with her big lips, and it's hard to talk without sounding a little drunk. Yeah, because I'm not used to it. I have tiny lips.
That's called charisma, my friend. Anyway, yes, welcome. We are here to talk about the film Foxfire, a film which Brian has not seen, but it was suggested by a great friend and colleague of his. And now, Brian, tell us about our guest who's going to be joining us.
So Jazmyne Moreno. I've known her for a while now. My wife and I hired her at Vulcan Video, 11 years ago, something crazy like that. Early hire, and when I worked there, and she was one of those people that and I think she was like 18 or something. She was like just moved to Austin, like it was that week. She tells me often that I'm the first person that she met, like Chris and I were the first people that she met in Austin. But the interview was great. Like instantly I knew I loved her because of her obsession with Voyage of the Rock Aliens, which is a movie I really like a lot. And and I believe that she just was so smart about movies and was just so exciting to talk to her. It was like an instant hire. It was like, of course. And then she kind of became in charge of the screenings that Vulcan would do. We would do screenings at various bars and places, and she kind of took the reins of that and was like, I want to program that, I want to do that. And she programmed really great stuff, really interesting stuff. And then that kind of led to her being asked to program a bunch of stuff at the Alamo and would do guest spots on Weird Wednesday. She did the movie Naked Obsession, which is so good. Like, it's an erotic thriller starring the greatest American hero, William Catt. It's amazing, and she's a big champion of that movie, as am I. And she's just a person that I'm always running into and always around. And then, thankfully, when I started working again at the Austin Film Society, she got hired to be one of the head programmers there. So I see her every day. She does the late nights and a lot of the other stuff, and her programming is so awesome and so exciting and definitely like on brand for what we do here. She programs movies that people would not think are great, that no one's ever heard of, constantly, which is a hard job to do like a monthly, weekly program of late night kind of stuff and kind of get people, and like that kind of audience is a very cinema savvy audience, so to find stuff that they didn't know was good or they didn't know existed is hard work, but she does it all the fucking time. And they're huge. Like, they are the big hits of every week. Like, her movies do so well. And her intros are amazing. So if you're ever in Austin, go to any of the late nights. Usually it's like a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. She will intro it, and she does fantastic intros. And I'm just very excited that she has joined us finally. I can't believe we waited till the middle of season 2 to bring her in. I'm an idiot. I should have asked her last. Whenever you've asked me if there's anyone, I'm always like, I don't know. I'm a moron. What can I say? I totally was sitting on a great guest, and now here. Hopefully, this definitely won't be the last time. I hope you had a good time, and we'll come back for more. Just because I just love hearing her talk about movies.
Yeah, and she chose this film, which I had never heard of before. Are you familiar with this film at all? Even though you haven't seen it?
Yeah, it's where Clint Eastwood has that jet, right? And he's flying that jet around.
Nope. That's Firefox.
Oh, man. Wait a minute. Okay, Foxfire. Okay, I can see. I bet there's some similarities, maybe. Like, how's the masculinity treated in Foxfire? Because in Firefox, it's pretty awesome. You know. I kid, because I know. It's not good. The men aren't good in this movie.
Some of them know. Some of them are good in that they know their place, which is not in the story. Is to step aside and kind of let the story happen. Look good and let the girls do what they're going to do. So that's. I don't know. That's not really Eastwood's brand. So
no, it's not. No.
Yes. Well, I'm excited that you. This is my second time meeting Jazmyne because I filmed her for the Vulcan video documentary that's now hosted on our intro episode, and I encourage people to check that out and to please watch Foxfire. It's available on YouTube and other streaming platforms. Watch it before you listen to this, because I don't know if there's a lot to spoil, but you should just do yourself a favor of enjoying the incredible charisma of Angelina Jolie in the film Foxfire, from which we are now going to play a clip.
There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers.
What else does he do?
He gets really close and he touches my chest.
What's going on?
Rudy's making up shit about Mr. Bettinger.
I'm not! Okay, I'm not! He gets behind me and he rubs himself on my ass.
You should be glad someone does.
Shut up, Cindy.
She's crazy. Everyone knows that.
She's telling the truth.
He does it to me, too. You don't count, Violet. You do it with everyone. Well, at least I know what I'm doing.
Oh, half the stories about you are true.
Give it a rest, Cindy.
Look, you're the assholes for letting him get away with it.
No. You're the asshole for letting him get away with it.
Excuse me? Who the fuck are you?
You're all assholes. Because when that son of a bitch puts his hands on her, you should tell yourself he's putting his hands all over you. Or you. Because he sure as hell would if he could.
So what are we supposed to do?
Make sure he never does it again.
How?
We stick together.
Foxfire from 1996 is based upon the Joyce Carol Oates novel Foxfire: Confessions of a Girl Gang. Directed by Annette Haywood-Carter from a screenplay by Elizabeth White, the film takes the novel out of its 1950s setting and places it in modern-day Portland, where a classroom of high school seniors is being preyed upon by a biology-teaching football coach played by John Diehl, until the arrival of Legs. As played by a young and overwhelmingly charismatic Angelina Jolie, Legs is a feminist take on the classic high school kid from out of town who galvanizes a gang of girls to stand up to the coach and then to the jocks who want them to be silent about his abuse. Underneath it all is the powerful connection between Legs and Foxfire's protagonist and narrator, Hedy Burress, as Maddie. Although never consummated on film, I believe we are supposed to read their relationship as a love story. In the end, the film kind of loses the plot, but the energy of Jenny Lewis, Jenny Shimizu, and Sarah Rosenberg, along with Burress and Jolie as the gang of girls hurtling through their teenage years in the mid-90s, makes the film a great new discovery for me, and I can't wait to talk about it with you. Welcome to The World is Wrong, Jazmyne Moreno.
Thanks for having me.
So why did you pick this film, this fantastic, foxy, fiery, Foxfire film?
I'm a huge fan of this film and just in general, sort of 90s women's-centric cinema that I think often gets forgotten. But as of, the past few years, there have definitely been people who are making the case for films such as Foxfire. So people are finding these films again. So I've always been a big fan of this era of filmmaking, and I think this is one of the more interesting cases on a lot of fronts in terms of the actual subject of the film, but also its backstory and sort of how it was distributed and ultimately sort of what that says about the state of women's filmmaking in the 90s.
I certainly was unaware of this film until you recommended it. So you're doing the work that the distributors, I guess, failed to do. So how is the world wrong about Foxfire?
This film was pretty roundly dismissed when this was released. Critics, Variety savaged this film when it was first released. And if it wasn't just outright, denigrated, it was sort of looked at as trivial. It was easily dismissed as sort of a piece of fun, not quite put together. And that was it. I mean, it was in theaters for no time at all, really. And a lot of that had to do with the critical reaction to this film, in addition to a few other things that were happening in the background.
What was happening in the background?
So this film was only released for a 1-week engagement. This was 1 week, and it was dropped in art houses. So this is a teen movie.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously a teen movie that's been given a rated R rating, right? It's rated R for a very, very long scene of female bonding involving, nudity. And, this is a rated R movie for teens. Nobody knows how to market it. It was supposed to be released in the spring. It was going to be like, here's our hot teen ticket for spring break. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't make it happen. And at the time, MGM was going through some financial issues, actually. They were going bankrupt. So it ended up that they were going to shuffle it to the summer. But that didn't quite work because it went up against some of the other big releases. So they dumped it in January. And it was released 2 days before Girls Town, which is kind of similar. Again, female bonding and what such. So it's released 2 days before that. It came out a few months before Set It Off, a few months before The Craft. So I think it just sort of got lost, and you didn't have stars in this film. We can look at it now and you've got Angelina Jolie, but at that time she'd only been in Hackers, which wasn't a hit.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have Jenny Lewis, who at the time was, she'd been in movies as a kid, but most notably Troop Beverly Hills.
Right.
And then you've got Jenny Shimizu, who's, a Calvin Klein model and acting in her first role and not a household name. So you don't have stars in this film. It's a star-making performance for Angelina Jolie, but I think, you'd have to actually have seen that film to get it.
Yeah.
So you have all of that going on, and it's a shame, really, because the director of this film, it's this is her, the fallout of this film, this was a flop, this was a flub, and after that, she wasn't able to get another film kind of off the ground, and for 17 years.
Have you seen Savannah?
I haven't. I haven't seen it.
It's not good. We're very positive here, but I did pay my dues to watch it. I mean, I didn't pay to watch it, I guess, through some subscription I did. But I watched it, and I was, yes, the rebellious spirit was certainly, Hollywood beat the rebellious spirit out of Annette. What is it? Annette Haywood Carter.
Annette Haywood-Carter.
Yeah, it's a very, well, we can get into discussing it. I don't want to interrupt it, but that's one of the areas of research that I did. I also watched the film that got her like some, this film, I guess, was the film The Foot Shooting Party with Leonardo DiCaprio. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I kind of tried to watch that a few years back. Yeah. Wasn't a big thing.
I'm not sure if Annette Haywood-Carter, certainly it was a difficult time for women filmmakers. In watching this, and I don't want to come in hot on the negative because I'm very positive on a lot of this film, but having watched it now a couple times and watched her other work, I'm feeling like maybe
it's on you, Annette. It's what you.
Yeah, it
A little.
Yeah, maybe she wasn't up to this material. Like,
yeah,
like she was given a powerhouse cast and a powerhouse story, the Joyce Carol Oates story, and well, we can discuss it, but certainly that doesn't explain why this film, because the film is, I think, this film is much, much better than either of those other two efforts. Like, this is definitely the high water point for her that she's been able to express on film. Who knows? Maybe someone who pines for the rustic old ways of the Deep South would love the Savannah. Jim Caviezel as a gentleman hunter. It's tough. It's a tough watch. I had to break it up into 2 days. But anyway, not to interrupt. Continue on telling us about how the world is wrong about this, even if maybe not about Annette Haywood-Carter. No offense, Annette. I'm sure.
I'm good. I think I've covered sort of. I think this film, there is in talking about sort of, filmmakers and their potential. I think there's a lot of potential shown with this film.
Yeah.
And you almost get the feeling that if she would have gotten something to follow this up with and a bit of support for what she was trying to do, it's, perhaps there wouldn't have been a Savannah.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of those stories sort of in that time frame, and a lot of women sort of not finding their footing as filmmakers, whether, if they're filmmakers behind better films than this, really. So there are a lot of those stories from that time frame that I think is they're really interesting. It's like women given opportunities, and then those opportunities sort of don't become, resounding success stories, and then that's sort of the last you hear of them. And in this case, it's very, you're done. You're one and done. It's your big break, your big opportunity, in this case with Foxfire. And for others, it's like they turn to television and were able to sort of subsist that way. But in her case, she went to teaching and wasn't able to sort of sustain a career in filmmaking for 17 years behind the camera. So it's always an interesting thing to sort of see where some of these women landed. And I think Foxfire is what most interests me about this film is honestly that, and sort of how it fits in with those stories of those filmmakers, which I think still haven't really been told. So in terms of the actual film, seeing women bonding, young girls bonding, there's always an appeal of that as a woman, because you don't always get that. They're not at each other's throat. One thing I appreciate about this over the Joyce Carol Oates story is it's less a violent revolt against the gender order than it is just sort of, stand up for yourself, in general, right? Not so much of like men, which is very much hammered home in the original story.
I just realized, and I feel embarrassed now, because I actually know Annette. She was the script supervisor on A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, the Dream Master, which I was in. And so, gosh, Annette, I'm really sorry. Although, not so sorry, because why didn't you cast me in Firefox or Foxfire? Because you knew me. Gosh darn it. Okay, anyway.
You could have had Peter Facinelli's role.
I could have been, I could. Come on. He's got a, I know. I mean, I've seen both of our butts. You haven't seen both of our butts, but Peter's got a better butt than mine, and it's featured heavily in this film.
It is.
But I could have played one of, one
of the jocks?
Yeah, I could play one of those jerky jocks, or actually, I really liked the sympathetic jock, the Elden Henson character. That sort of, he was overall, I knew the casting director, Mally Finn. She cast me in something at that time, and as I've watched this over and over again, I kind of think that she's the MVP of this production, because the cast
absolutely
is so, like you say, there's no stars, but that makes it even more impressive how many stars are in this. And I think that's also part of what,
the potential behind this film. Within this film
yeah. I mean, Angelina Jolie, like you said, is she's James Dean walking into this movie. She's Mickey Rourke in Rumblefish. She's Brando. Yeah, she's all the cool ones. Which made me want to say, you were talking about other films that are touchstones for this. Either I'm thinking more in terms of thematically, but you also were focusing on that particular time. You mentioned The Craft, different film, but same poster. Kind of.
Virtually. It's virtually the same poster. And I mean, The Craft is also, it's a girl gang.
Yeah.
It's a girl game of magic, but it's a girl gang. But I think also when you're looking at something like The Craft versus this, you definitely see what happens with a bigger budget and, perhaps a stronger script as well. But yeah, it's you see a lot of the potential of the story when you watch it up against something like The Craft. But I mean, what do you do when you're oh, okay, we've got a bunch of these coming out at once, and there are a lot of those girl rebellion movies in the 90s as well, at this time. So, a lot of indies, Fun, which not my favorite film I will not go to bat for, but I think that's 1992, maybe 94. It's in there somewhere. You've got, Gun Crazy a little earlier than this. So you've got, several of those sort of floating around. And this one thing I will say is it doesn't necessarily stay so close to its source material, but it does in a way stay close to that time period, because this film really does harken back to those 50s girl gang movies, High School Hellcats, etc., and I love those films. But when you watch some of those films, they're sort of, they're more in your face, than this film is, which is interesting. It's this is a lot of just high school hijinks, the actual, things that they do in the film, save for the ending. But yeah, it doesn't push so hard in a lot of ways in terms of their rebellion that you see on screen. And there are other issues, with the film in and of itself, which kind of, become a bit frustrating.
I have a few sort of areas I'd like to approach the film from, just sort of in general. So one of the touchstones that I thought of that is, because we recently did an episode about Jennifer's Body, which is a film that has a similar story behind it. It was put out by people who didn't understand who its audience was. It disappeared, but it has received a renewed interest, in part because of that story, and in part because Karen Kusama, the director, has gone on to much more interesting work. And that film didn't stop her.
Yes.
So that's like one of the touchstones that I think of. And when you were talking about like the sort of the Annette Haywood-Carter's non-success story, you could see like 20 years later, I guess, the Jennifer's Body being like, okay, well, there's some progress there. When I mentioned I was covering this film to someone else, they also mentioned that they thought it made them think of the film Foxes.
Yes.
Which are you a fan of that film?
I am a fan of that film. I presented that film a few years ago at the Alamo Draft House here in Austin, and it was a small crowd, although it was sold out, but very, very small. We were in the smallest theater. So we were sold out, but like there are very few people actually there. But yeah, I do like that film. I have my issues with that film, but overall, like I mean, it's that or, you know, Times Square, kind of in that similar vein. Ladies and Gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, you know, Legend of Billie Jean. And those are favorites of mine. They're also films that I think a lot of women love because, I mean, you don't get characters like that. You don't get, like, you know, a lot of, like, girl rebellion like that that's angry on some level. But they're also so cool, right? You want to hang out with them. And this is very much a hangout kind of movie. You know, you want to join this gang.
Yeah, it really is a hangout. Like at the end, it confused me. When I had watched it the first time and I went back to it, I was like, so what happens at the end? Like, did they, and because at the beginning there's a very direct conflict with this abusive teacher played by John Diehl, and then it gets a little bit more diffuse because it's the football guys trying to put pressure on the girl gang to retract their statements against the professor, who's also like the football coach. The teacher is also the football coach. And then it just becomes sort of like, well, Angelina Jolie is going to be leaving town, and that's the conflict. In the book, because you've read the book, is that a reflective of how the book tells the story?
It hits the major points, right? Like it hits the major plot points. But the issue becomes, like, I think in the film, you know, and as I was rewatching it, I was just like, you can't tell, like, how much time passes. Because in the film, it's like, is it a week? Like, how long is she there? It's not clear, you know.
Well, she has to go do 6 months in prison or in juvenile hall. Is it 6 months or a year? How long is she?
She's gone for a while. And you're like,
but then the one girl admits that she lied to the judge, so maybe she gets out early. But yeah, you're right. It's very dubious.
Yeah, you can't tell, and it feels like a week passes. You know, you're like, how long is this? And you know, it's supposedly that it's pretty much senior year. You know, it's all year, and you don't really get that sense in the film of time. And I think that also sort of plays into wondering what the hell is going on, and like the sort of lurch of tone and direction that the film takes at certain points, just due to the fact where you're like, it's disorienting as to how long any of this, you know, is going on and how long they've been friends or anything. And I think that's sort of that's an issue in the film that isn't there in the book, just because you have, you know, pages upon pages to flesh everything out. And there's some characters in the film that just they disappear, you know, they just totally disappear. So I know one of the reasons you want to talk about this one as well is that you have Jenny Lewis, and it's like her character kind of disappears.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, she's there are scenes with her and her character, but she's just sort of introduced and that's it. The Violet character is never really clear, like, who she is. It's like she's the resident, you know, slut, so to speak. But there's more to her, and you never quite figure out what that is. So, like, those two characters in particular get very little screen time. But even Hedy Burress' character of Maddie, kind of, you know, her thing to sort of just stare at Angelina Jolie's character of Legs. she's sort of sidelined. Everyone's sort of sidelined. And Lex is a character you never get close to exactly and never quite figure out her backstory. You can kind of pick the pieces up, but you don't really know who she is, where she's from, or anything much about her. And then it ends up Jenny Shimizu's movie by the end, sort of with the character of Goldie, or us centering Goldie in a way that's really unexpected. So there's some interesting choices being made there.
Yeah, that's where I feel like the film is just more film than the director knew what to do with. It made me. Have you seen the 2012 Laurent Conté French version?
I have not.
It's not actually. I think it's in English language because I saw a preview that's in English, and it looked really interesting. It's a very hard film to track down at this point. So. But I was very curious because it seems like it really tells the 50s story. And the thing I like about this film, one of the things that I think is so great, is it really does capture a 90s Northwest feel. That's why I feel like the music supervisor and the casting director are the real stars of the film.
Oh, yeah. And
then the source material, which is strong. And it's unfortunate because I don't want to basically I don't want to just blame Annette Haywood-Carter and Elizabeth White, who wrote the screenplay. And at the same time, I do feel like, well, if I wasn't trying to be supportive of them, my support would be to point out that, yeah, they're in over their heads on this film. Angelina Jolie walks onto this film and it's like, okay, well, I'm ready to make Rebel Without a Cause. And I'm sorry, but they're not Nick Ray. They just got way more movie than they could handle. And I don't think that obviously that doesn't have to do with being women. That has to do with being first-time filmmakers who are in a situation that happens to a lot of first-time filmmakers. I've worked with them. I've been on sets like that. You just get into a situation where, oh my God, because of casting, what we thought was a little $1 million movie is now a $10 million movie, even though it's not costing more. We're now dealing with, multi-million-dollar agents, and we are dealing with multi-million-dollar publicists, and we are dealing with just a different level of film. And I would love to see, maybe the difference is that if they were dudes, they might have got a second chance to
without a
make
doubt.
that mistake again, or not without a doubt, because we definitely talk to a lot of our show.
That's
means
true.
We talk to a lot of filmmakers who get one shot, make a really good film, and never get to make another one, and it usually has something to do with just that that Hollywood is very difficult on everyone, unless you unless you have someone having your back, and there's more chance that
if you're a
dude is going to have someone to have their back
Yeah.
than at this time for women, and
for people of color in general as well. There are a lot of filmmakers where it's like, yeah, their story, if you look at it, they never had that support. They got a shot, but they never had that support, and they never had that, person in the background sort of rooting for them. And I think in the case of Foxfire, if Foxfire had been directed by a man, it is without a doubt that they would have gotten another shot because of the potential you see in that film. When you go and look at something like The Craft, the fact that I forget the director's name, but you go and look at some of his early work, it's like, it's not great. This guy still got to make films and bigger films, Yeah. And that happens. And I think that if you're saying when it comes to something like Foxfire, there is a great deal of potential with that film. It also is just a sad case of everything happening in terms of distribution just set this film up to fail. I mean, it's just a week. You have 1 week.
Right. No. And in art houses, it's clearly, it's like Jennifer's Body in that sense, or like a film where they just did not know how to market it. And a lot of time that not knowing might have to do with knowing that, oh, well, the craft's coming and we have more, that's going to have a bigger budget. And
yeah, it's like, well, how do we compete against this thing
right.
that's coming our way? And yeah, I mean, again, it was released within like a few days of something like Girls Town, which was also released in art houses to more acclaim. And you had, at least in terms of art house audiences, a familiar face in Lily Taylor in that film. You've got like Michael Imperioli's in that film as well, you know, at the time. That it's a little different, something a little different. But there are like some sort of familiar faces, and that received more critical acclaim. And if you're talking about what's more of an art house release, it's that and not Foxfire.
This should have been marketed with its soundtrack.
Oh, absolutely.
And marketed as a Northwest riot girl film.
Yeah.
But they didn't, like, that language barely existed. Certainly didn't exist in Hollywood, because I was in Hollywood trying to use that language around those times, and no one knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case of also being like, it's too on, right? It's too on. And it's too with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you suffer for that a great deal. It's like you're just a little ahead, or you're right on the money, and people don't quite know what to do with that.
Yeah, the soundtrack is amazing. You know, it really captures that time.
It's like if that had been released a few years later, that would have been like MTV Films.
Yeah.
You know, it would have been MTV would have released that. They would have pushed the hell out of like that angle. And that's what that film needed. It has those long scenes of like music playing and stuff, and you know, talking about that scene with the they're branding themselves, the tattooing scene, which gets its R rating. But it's like that scene's actually a beautiful scene. It's like Mazzy Star playing, and yeah, it's you know, what do you do with this?
So is that scene in the book?
Of them like tattooing.
Angelina Jolie takes off her top, and then they all take off their tops, and it becomes this female bonding thing. And when you said if a guy had directed this film, he would have got other chances, and I won't argue with that. That's fine. But I think if a guy had directed this film, if that scene had happened and been shot exactly the same way, I would feel differently about it.
Absolutely.
Than knowing a woman is shooting the scene. And I still have a scene, like, my response was, I guess probably maybe the healthy one of being like, uh-oh, I should leave this room. This isn't, I'm like, this. I
think that is so right. Yeah, that's totally.
Her taking her top off is not meant for me. I should and I feel a little bit like I should turn away. I'm not invited into this, ritual, but the film is inviting me into the ritual.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what do you make of that scene? Do you feel like it's, one, is that scene in the book? And two, do you feel like it manages to communicate that bonding thing and not we have a chance to get more people to watch our movie because we have naked girls in it?
I don't. The thing is I read that book when I was a teenager. I don't remember if that scene is in the book at all.
Okay.
I just don't remember. But in terms of sort of the scene itself, I mean, I think the reaction you had is accurate. I mean, that scene is a scene of just like intense, like female bonding, and like it's not really for you, and that sort of closed off quality of the film, I think, as a whole, really, you see throughout the film that it's not really for men, period. You know, this is not the film for you. They've cleaned up some of the sort of very sort of anti-male language and what such that's in the book that I remember distinctly. But that's one of those moments where you're like, yeah, you know what? This isn't for you at all. And in terms of sort of taking off their tops and whatever, how that feels as a woman, I think also because Legs is so obviously, she's a character who's there just as like a catalyst for their awakening. And part of that is also a sexual awakening. And I think also this sort of, you know, nudity, as she strips herself bare and she's exposed and they're exposed. But I think that sort of what's behind that is less salacious than it. And you see that in the way it's shot too. You know, it's like, it doesn't linger as much as it just sort of stays in that moment. It is an incredibly long moment, but you're not lingering on people's bodies. And I think it's a subtle difference. But the difference that I definitely noted when I was sort of rewatching is sort of how that camera moves about through the room. And you've got 3 out of the 5 girls topless, but you're not staring at them. The camera never feels as if like you should be gawking at these girls so much as you are a part of the moment with them. And I think that's a very distinct difference. Whether or not that was let's get some, we need some TNA in this, and like this will really help. I don't know, but I get the sense that that's not quite the case, and that's not what's going on there. Not like a producer was like, I need some tits, and they were like, well, here's a scene for you, because I think that satisfies anyone's urge to see that. And you would have, pushed it further, I think. And there's the potential to sort of push that film further in terms of the sexual content, which is minimal, because you have all of that sexual tension with the Legs character and Maddie, also sort of with the character of Goldie. So yeah, like Legs is sort of androgynous and mysterious, and she comes through and awakens these characters. And like I said, part of that is a sexual awakening that I almost wish the film did push that further, and it doesn't. But I think the film would become all about that if it did as well.
And I guess that's part of where I want this film to be a better movie, which it is fair, but it isn't fair. It's the same way I feel about a lot of teen type movies. There's a different place that, I don't know, that Rumblefish lives than Footloose.
Yes.
And they're both kind of like there's still, and this movie's the same movie. The cool person in boots. Mm-hmm. Let's not even say it's not the cool guy. Like the cool person in boots shows up and shakes things up, mm-hmm. and makes people have to grow up and deal with how serious or how poetic or how beautiful and how tragic the world is, mm-hmm. because all the grown-ups don't get it. Mm-hmm. And and this film, there is a part that feels like it's trying. That's where the sense of not strong direction is that it keeps trying to be different kinds of movies, yeah. and not in a conscious way, mm-hmm. not in this way of like, okay, we're going to be shifting. It's like, I'm dealing with this powerful I don't even mean this in a bad way, but Angelina Jolie walks onto that set and it throws off. I mean, she's playing the role you cast, but the amount of charisma coming off of her is going to throw off the balance of everything. And I was also reading here that, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but when I was doing research on this, that Jenny Shimizu and Angelina Jolie had been a couple before this?
They met during and had a relationship, like, sort of during the making of this. And it's like Angelina Jolie was with, like, Johnny Lee Miller at the time, and as well. And so, yeah, it's really interesting.
There's a lot to contend with, yeah. as a director.
You've got a lot.
Who are still fine. Yeah. And I'm sure you're dealing with producers and at least your distributors or whoever's funding this who are outside of this group, that you're constantly having to prove yourself in ways that any director has to, but the specifics of how you're having to when you're a woman in that situation, a women's team in that situation, is just going to be different. And it just, again, there's all these things throwing this film off balance. When you look at the previews for that 2012 version, it looks like it's not as exciting a movie, but it's definitely more a movie that knows what it is.
Mm-hmm. And this one, I think this suffers from what I think a lot of, so in sort of thinking about this time period, which I find to be like a really interesting time period for women directors, you find this a lot though, where it's like, it's not quite at this, it's not quite at that. You get the sense there's a lot of pushing and pulling behind the scenes to make this a more marketable and more profitable project. And that comes across in quite a few of the films from this era, from a lot of these women filmmakers. And it's understandable that they suffer later from advertisers not knowing how to handle it, how to market this film. Because I do agree that this film it seemingly has a lot of depth, but at the same time is just a teen movie. And at the same time is going for something very different, and you end up in that weird space that I think something like a Poison Ivy finds itself as well. Something that you're like, there's a lot more depth that's underneath the surface here that's not being explored. And you feel that, and there's this sort of tension and this frustration within the work, and that you see sort of on the screen between what was probably on the page and the finished product.
Yeah. There's something really zeitgeisty about it, that it doesn't matter whether or not it's good. Mm-hmm. It's so full of energy and time and place, mm-hmm. and potential.
Yes.
That it's kind of fine that it's a mess. It's only because I'm doing a podcast about it that I've gone back and watched it multiple times and have thought deeply about it. That I'm like, oh, well, yeah, this...
It doesn't quite... Yeah, it's like... But you just had the one watch. You would go like, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, fuck, Jenny Lewis and Angelina... I just come away with what everyone probably should have come away with, which is Angelina Jolie is a generational star. Mm-hmm. Just... like, let's get on with it. that's a, I think what's your take on Angelina Jolie?
I think she's great. And I think in this film, again, like this is a star making performance. This is her rebel without a cause. She pulls a Brando kind of a thing too, yeah. And you're like, no, the energy she has in this film is out of this world, and the magnetism. And when you sit there and you watch her, I will say, in terms of, you said she kind of throws off the vibe. It's like, she definitely changes the vibe of this film, and it's her film immediately. I think when you see her in this or something later, like Girl Interrupted, it's her film. Like, it doesn't matter who else is on screen. If Angelina Jolie is on screen, it's her film. And she has the ability to sort of outshine her co-stars in a way that is equally compelling, but also can sort of throw off the entire tone of the material. Because whatever movie Angelina Jolie is in, I don't think anyone else is in that movie. And that's sort of a thing you see with this film. Whatever Angelina Jolie is acting in, I don't think it's quite Foxfire as it stands, as it exists. And that's what's sort of the most interesting thing about it, and sort of sitting there watching it and thinking like, yeah, I think a lot of what doesn't work or what really works for this film rests on her, but also she elevates the film just enough. But then the source material, the material at hand, the script doesn't quite serve her and her performance. So there's like a frustration with watching her on screen where you're like, I want more from her and what she's doing, but no one else is quite doing that thing either. And again, there is that sense that the film is a bit of everything and it's not quite clear what this movie is. Because I think they on some level did make, there's the little indie is in there and the teen movie is in there. But what they didn't make was like a Hollywood movie at all.
And that's kind of what's great about it. The very Portlandy, Northwesty feeling is lasting. That's, again, kudos to the director. They captured the vibe of that time and place mm-hmm. very well. Like, I was there at that time. And, it feels like the truth. Mm-hmm. That last shot at the movie where Hedy Burress climbs up the bridge mm-hmm. in Portland and is running across there, and then there's this long I guess, helicopter shot pulling away. Not a cheap shot at all.
Mm-hmm.
Also kind of scary because that's pre-digital effects. So she's up on that bridge and doesn't look like there's wires.
Mm-hmm.
That was a very impressive shot all around.
Oh yeah, and the echoing that first scene with Angelina Jolie on there as well, like hanging off the rail, and it's terrifying.
Which also it reminded me of Saturday Night Fever.
Mm.
There's all that stuff on the bridge in Saturday Night Fever.
Mm-hmm.
And I did wonder how much the film was aware of the just sort of the lineage of that kind of movie, and am I just projecting that onto it, or was the film aware that it was hearkening back to these other scenes in other popular, zeitgeisty teen films?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one of those really interesting things when you're watching it. It's like I said, it reminds me so much of like all of these like teen movies of the 50s, and these sort of girl gang pictures that you would see from that era. But also it's not quite clear if it is aware of that. I do agree. But then you'll have little nods at least to the time period and maybe the cars and this and that and certain scenes that play out. But that's also because it's coming from the book. So I don't know what the inspiration behind some of the scenes that you see on screen, what that stems from. But yeah, I don't know. It's a film that I think, as time has gone on, I'm really loving that people are rediscovering that. And I think because there's such a desire to find films directed by women, and the conversation has shifted so much since this film.
Yeah.
That people are just really looking for those films. And one of the things that as a film programmer I have to sort of contend with is I can't change film history for you, right? They're just films that they don't exist. They're films that, filmmakers whose careers just didn't last, and maybe there's this film here, that film here, but there aren't a lot of films quite like this. And I can't change that. And as a film programmer, you sort of run into audiences who want more of something like this, or they want to see, more films directed by women. And you have to look for those. They're out there, but you really do have to look for those and find those. And although, more and more of the conversation has shifted and sort of what we're looking for has changed, a lot of the same issues persist. And the fact is that this is never going to sort of be a film that is going to really be considered a huge touchstone, right? Like this is never going to be a film that people are going to look at and say, what film was just completely underrated, Foxfire. It's never going to quite be exactly that. But I think what it is a film that sort of shows you the possibilities for a brief moment, that there were these possibilities in that time period. And I think it's important to note that because so much of the conversation today rests around, well, there aren't any women making films, or there aren't that many, but they're out there. And you have to find them. And I think the biggest lesson of Foxfire and films of that era is that they were out there. They were around. You just have to find those films.
Yeah. And, when I talk about a movie, I try and have it on in the background. And so while we're talking about it, I'm watching. And there are, again, I've been critical of the direction. I think that's because the whole is not as great as the sum of its parts. Mm-hmm. And that's the director's, to some degree, although the director probably didn't have the final cut on this one. So, but to some degree that lays at the director's doorstep. But on the other hand, as I'm watching it, there are some just great scenes that show an intelligence about filmmaking mm-hmm. that is worthy of a second shot. Mm-hmm. I was just watching the dance scene, which I think is at the time, even the first time I saw it, I thought it was one of the most affecting, just little sections of the film. It's after the gang finds out that their action against this predatory teacher has encouraged other women to start speaking up. And they're excited and they're happy about this, so they go and they start dancing, and they're off in this hideaway house. And it's a great, exciting dance scene. And then Jenny Lewis dances away. And we'll get to talking about her performance, because I do think there's something special about her performance. And just as she's dancing, and in this moment of total abandon for herself, we see the football players come into we see them behind the window, and they're now watching these women dancing. And it's that same feeling of like, ooh, like that same feeling I had when Angelina Jolie takes her shirt off, of like, oh, no, you're not, this isn't for you. This isn't for you. Except in that time it was, this isn't for me. But then later when they show up, I'm like, no, this isn't for you either. Go away. And it's all communicated in camera moves, beautifully directed. In fact, that whole scene plays out across this window, and it includes the ickiness of the guys watching them, but then that sympathetic boy and his sort of cute connection with Jenny Lewis, and all of it through this window that is making this larger statement of the separation between the sexes, I guess, in this sense. But not just the sexes, the gang, the outsiders and the insiders, except in this case, the insiders are outside and the outsiders are inside. Anyway, I hope I described that well enough. I mean, if you've seen the film, then you know what I was talking about. If you haven't seen the film, you really should have seen it before we started talking about it, because we've been spoiling it. So anyway, so there are some really excellent moments of filmmaking, even if all in all, it doesn't add up to, I don't know, Rumblefish, which is Francis Ford Coppola working 12 films in with the crew and total control and all that stuff that Annette Haywood-Carter doesn't have. Can we talk about Jenny Lewis's performance in this?
Absolutely.
Are you a fan of Jenny Lewis?
I can't say I'm a fan of her music. It's not like it's just not my thing. It's not like it's bad or anything. It's just not my thing. But no, she is great in this. And it's a very like sensitive performance, and it's a very natural performance. And it's like, out of the actresses in the film, that it's like you almost wish she had the Hedy Burress role.
Yeah. Yes. Totally. No offense, Hedy. I'm sorry. You've had a very successful career as a TV actor, and so whatever I say doesn't matter. But yes, please, can we have Jen? That would have been, yes, a much better movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that there's a scene where Jenny Lewis is in the grocery store and she's singing. I actually am a fan of Jenny Lewis's music, and so watching her work her music into films is one of the fun things about watching Jenny Lewis sort of transition out of being an actor. Mm-hmm. She does it in Dawn's Plum. She does it in this, where she works in her playing music or singing a song or talking about writing a song. And I don't know. I love that. And she's an actor who I know, she could, if she wanted to be in movies, she could be in movies, mm-hmm. I'm sure. And she chooses not to. But I think it is such a waste. Not a waste. It's such a tragedy for me, because I really like her as a young actor, and I really have immense respect for her as an adult artist, performer, songwriter, and she certainly has grown into a compelling iteration of this girl that we know on film. Mm. And to see her at least once play an adult, sort of tie that bow and play an adult role in films, not in adult films, in a grown up, not playing a teenager, playing a grown up in films would be. I'm still holding out hope that somewhere P.T. Anderson or a director of that stature can lure her out of her exile from cinema and bring her back. But okay, that was my little plea to the universe for more Jenny Lewis on film. Anything else you have to say about Jenny Lewis in this film, or I'd like to just like kind of walk through the cast and see if there's anyone else that deserves high praise.
Well, it's like I forget the name of the actress who plays Violet.
Sarah Rosenberg. She's great in it, and yes, let's talk about her.
Yeah, no, she's wonderful, and this sort of like, you know, broken doll quality to her, and you know, both she and Jenny are really wonderful. And I feel like if there's anyone who kind of, you want to switch up Hedy Burress' role with Jenny, and if I had my way, Jenny Shimizu's is like, yeah, she's a great face, but she's not selling me in this movie. And that's like the weak point in terms of the casting. It's like she's a great face, but she's not quite up to the task of her character. But when you see the character Violet, and she's wonderful, and she's barely in film, you know, you forget that she's there, which is such a shame. And speaking of that scene with Jenny Lewis singing, it's like it's her in that scene as well. But yeah, it's like those two characters don't really get enough screen time. And then Hedy Burress' Maddie just sort of disappears a little just because of the nature of that role. But also she's the one most often up against Angelina Jolie in a scene. And it's like, whatever you do, I mean, you're in someone's shadow, right? So, yeah, I feel like I think the cast is fantastic, sort of with the exception of Jenny Shimizu. But Jenny Shimizu is so charismatic, and you want to like her. You know, you want to like her, and there's something very, she's very striking. And there's something sort of lived in like her character, where you get this sense like Jenny Shimizu might be closer to this character than any of the like other people are to their characters beyond Angelina Jolie. So that sort of like rebel character that she, I think, probably understands. You get that sense, but she's sort of my one, like if I had to look at one person to just sort of boot from the cast, it unfortunately is Jenny Shimizu. But I think everyone is so wonderful in this film that you just sort of, you know, again, you see the potential of everyone in this film. And I think there's so much potential on screen that it's a joy to sort of watch on that front as well.
When I was doing research on this, I was sure that I had seen Sarah Rosenberg in something, like as a regular on some series. Like she seemed so familiar. And then I went and looked, and
nothing.
Really nothing. Her picture's not even on IMDb. She reminds me of like a young Leslie Ann Warren. You know, and it's that same kind of quality, this sort of broken beauty, as I think the way you described it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a broken doll quality. There's something.
Yeah, broken doll. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do just sort of want to like give that girl a hug. Like, you know, you get this sense like you need a hug, maybe. You know, you want to kind of help her. And you don't see a lot of her. She's at the very beginning of the film and then just sort of slowly disappears throughout. And speaking of differences between the book and the film, it's like I do recall that like in the book there are many more girls. You know, like these are the core group, but there are other girls that join this gang. And yeah, it's like I appreciate that the film sort of focuses and doesn't have that element where other girls are sort of joining them or anything like that. But at the same time, you sort of have that, you sort of expend a lot of characters, you know, especially by the time you get to sort of the final act of the film. It's like they're barely there. They're there just to sort of react to legs, you know.
Yeah, and like at the end, I'm unclear if the coach has been, if they actually got rid of him, or if he won his, like that sort of disappears. The issue of this predatory coach / teacher. And then it becomes sort of just about how Legs has made turn these girls into rebellious elements in their families or in the rest of their lives. And then it really is just that Legs is leaving town, and it's a breakup, sort of this sad breakup scene. That's the end of the movie. And there is a part of me that wonders, okay, I think this is one of the good things about the emergence of more women filmmakers and just being aware of a film being directed by a woman, is that the disorienting or alienating experience I have of like, this isn't made for me. And so I'm trying to get my mind around, okay, are the things that don't work for me, are those the film not working? Or is that the film is just more interested in something that I'm not used to? Like that what this film in the end is all about is about Maddie and legs, and all of this other stuff that I consider like important plot stuff is more important to me, but not important to the movie or who it's made for. And then the question that then is like, that I find myself asking is like, wait, has this been what it's been like for every woman ever to watch all of the movies that I consider essential? like you have to do this math every time you watch a movie? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to do.
Well, I think you're right,
yeah.
though. Like this is, and speaking of some of the scenes that we've touched on, it's like there is, it isn't for you, it really isn't. And it's a film that I think, again, talking about sort of the renewed interest in this film and others of that time period, it's very clear that these are films made with women or girls in mind. And, when it comes to something, that came out a few years after this, which is All I Want to Do, girls also sort of rebelling, and, it's a lot of fun. But that film's not for men, it's not for boys, and you get that throughout. And I think one of the things with Foxfire that is particularly interesting is it's a vibe, and you're just hanging out. So I think all of those sort of details that, as you mentioned, seem very important to you are totally irrelevant for someone like me, because I just want to hang out with these girls. I want to hang out with this gang. I want to be a part of this gang, and I could be, and that there's that sort of excitement. When you watch something like The Craft as well, which not written or directed by a woman, but you watch The Craft, and I think a lot of the appeal of The Craft is like hanging out with these girls. You want to hang out with these girls, and seeing also these girls as outsiders and watching them sort of struggle to find their place is very interesting. And again, it's something that you don't always see, for women and for young girls, characters like this on screen. There aren't a lot of legs, and there are not a lot of characters like that for women at all.
Well, there's not a lot of Angelina Jolies. Like, to be honest, there's not. Like, yeah. I went back and I was like, this reminds me of that movie Reckless from like with Aidan Quinn and Daryl Hannah.
I know that.
The whole time I was like, but I went back and watched it. I was like, no, Aidan Quinn is not like for my teenage self. I was like, I want to be you. Mm-hmm. And as an adult, I'm like, yeah, you're not James Dean or Angelina Jolie. You're Aidan Quinn, and that's fine. But there's a difference. It's very rare that this kind of charisma just finds its way into films and is that sure of itself. I don't like.
But I mean, when you watch something like other films of hers, like sort of this similar, not in a way of just sort of hanging out with a bunch of women and of different types and backstories, is like Girl Interrupted. Mm-hmm. And it's like she's right there with like this incredible cast.
Yeah,
it's an incredible cast. Winona Ryder, Brittany Murphy, and you're sitting there and it's like, no, this is Angelina's movie. Like, like this is, what was the joke? She Girl Interrupted Winona Ryder. And like, yeah, she has that ability to just sort of, she steals the moment by sheer charisma and force of personality as soon as she walks on screen. So it's like you can't take your eyes off of her. But in terms of even the writing, there aren't many characters like that for women. That is strictly reserved to men. That's the place of men, and the James Dean, the Brando. It is that role. You half expect her to like show up in like a crew neck t-shirt with her sleeves rolled up and like a packet of cigarettes, you know? And that's sort of the end.
Well, they play with that at the beginning when she shows up and we just see her boots and we see her and then she drops her switchblade and then she's walking down the hall and someone says, "Hey, young man, tell me where you're going."
Yeah, there's a lot of like, is she a boy or whatever she is one of the lines. Like there's a girl or whatever waiting for you. And you're like, this is clearly just a girl with short hair. But like, you know, she has this sort of androgynous energy about her that is very compelling to watch on screen because it's not something you really see often. And it's interesting when you watch her and the Jenny Shimizu character because they had actually gone up for the same role in the film, I think. And it was like, you watch her and it's like Jenny Shimizu, you wish had that sort of similar quality just based on her look. You know, you kind of expect that from her, not so much of Angelina Jolie, who, you know, if you're just looking at her, you wouldn't expect like this sort of hardened edge to her at all, which I think is also like an interesting thing and sort of a source of tension watching her always on screen.
Her character and just her look in the film also reminds me, when you're talking about that there aren't other female roles written like this, another one that is like this is like the Catherine Moaning character from The L Word. And I had to look up the actress's name. I also know her from, she's also on Ray Donovan. And she has that same kind of like, there's a stunning physicality to her face, but this really deep, unaffected coolness that, you know, and then like, you know, I guess she gets cast in those kind of roles. I'm just trying to think of other examples. I'm sure there's got to be something there's got to be a Nicole Kidman something in there because she also, like, in order to play that thing, you kind of have to have that Brando, James Dean, Mickey Rourke thing of being like beautiful in just a weird enough way so that it's not like, so that you relate to it as opposed to you're sort of repelled by it. Like, oh, you're too beautiful, Peter Facinelli. I want you to show up in this movie and then go away.
Yeah. Well,
but
I was going to say, because we have not at all talked about the male component of this film, really. And like Peter Facinelli is like in his Skeet Ulrich role, which is basically not Johnny Depp. Like, it's like if they could cast Johnny Depp, they would have.
Right.
And you could sort of see that. But I kind of love that his character is just like, whatever these girls are doing, cool. Whatever. I got some thoughts, but I'm just going to let you do what you do. You know, he just sort of backs off, which I at least appreciate in that film, where it's like the men just sort of back off with very little fight. And with the exception of like, you know, the coach and the father at the end, they generally just sort of go, okay, the girls are being girls and we're going to stay away from this, whatever this is, generally, which I really love because it gives them space, but also, again, doesn't sort of take on this quality. It's less that they're fighting against men than they are finding themselves, which I really appreciate and think is a really smart choice in this film.
And, yeah, I know. And then obviously, then all the adults, they brought out the big guns. They got Richard Beymer and Cathy Moriarty.
Who is...
And John...
Yeah, totally. Oh, Cathy Moriarty is like totally just... You're like, oh, wait, you're here too. Like, you twice in the entire film. It's so bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's like, by that point, she's a big enough name to like, oh, let's have a big scene with mom. And it doesn't happen. Ever.
You feel like when they got her and they got Richard Beymer, from a casting standpoint, it's like, oh, well, this adds some name value to the film and we can get them in and we get them for one day for whatever their rate is, $25,000 or whatever. And they come in and do 2 scenes and then get them in and out quick. And then Chris Mulkey is the dad, great character actor. not a lovable role, certainly. And that pretty much rounds out the cast of Foxfire, and we've dug into the production team fairly significantly. I am kind of curious. We can't help but see ourselves in films. I don't. When I say were you ever part of a girl gang? But when I say a girl gang, I don't necessarily mean an outlaw gang like these girls, but like running with a group of girls. And did you feel like that was represented in this film?
Oh, totally. Like, totally. Yeah, I definitely hung out with a group of girls that we did school. we middle school, early high school. Yeah, we did school. One of my big moments that I remember being like, I think we were in like 8th grade. We did school and went off and like just sort of, we went to, of all places, we're a bunch of nerdy kids. That was our thing. We went to a school that prided itself on, preparing kids for the future. And so our form of rebellion was to ditch school and then go to a bookstore, went to Barnes and Noble and shoplifted books. That was, I know, it was, I stole Naked Lunch. That was my big,
oh yeah, real rebel.
So it's like, but you have that thing, and it totally gets the dynamic. One thing I love about the film is it gets the dynamics that are always sort of at play in those groups, and sort of who comes to the forefront, who's the leader, who is making sure that things don't go off the rails, or, the ones that you have to take care of. I love that it really does understand the dynamics of groups like that, and groups of kids and groups of girls, and sort of the roles that you take on. So I think that film does accurately depict that. And I think that's sort of what is most relatable as you're watching it as a woman, is it definitely understands hanging out in a group of girls and what that's like. So yeah, I didn't see myself so much in that regard, in terms of, I wasn't doing, the edgiest of things always, but I definitely saw that, and seeing sort of like, yeah, this is what it's like to be 15, 16, 17 years old, on some level. So it is what it's sort of like to be a teenage girl. And I think it really does capture that very well. And the crowning achievement of that film, for me as a viewer of that film and someone who does really love that film, is that it captures that element and is very true to that. I guess I somewhat see myself on some level.
Yeah. Was there a legs in your life?
The closest, oh God, was there a legs? I think like, yeah, there was somewhat of a legs character. But much more volatile in terms of just like handling group dynamics. So, it was cattier. The legs was cattier. My legs was much cattier. So we wouldn't go to bat for our legs in that group.
Got it. Cool. Well, I'm not only am I glad that you got me to watch this film, but now having talked with you about it, and this is kind of our goal on the show, is that when you approach a conversation about film with sort of the curiosity about like, okay, you love this, help me to understand, give me the Rosetta Stone to loving this film, because I want to love it too. And I feel like you have, and I like just that the film's focus on the hangout aspect of it really opens up my understanding of the film so much better than when we started. So, mission accomplished.
Awesome.
The world is just a little less wrong about this film, and maybe that's the case for some of our listeners as well. So, we talked about it in the intro. You are you're a film programmer at the Austin Film Society. The film programmer, or a part of a group of film programmers?
So I am part of I have my colleague Lars Nilsson, who's their lead programmer. I'm the associate programmer. I was brought on just a few months ago after having programmed for them for many, many years for a series called Lates. So, sort of taking on a new role within Austin Film Society and beyond just sort of my purview as like their resident weirdo, their weirdo guest programmer. So, it's been fun, and hopefully can get some screenings for more films sort of like this or around in that area that I really do adore and think need a little spotlight shown on them every once in a while.
I'm thinking that you might be the legs in your life. The weirdo outsider, but now you're brought in. Now you're a leader of this film gang. Which is funny because that's kind of the role you play in Brian Connolly's film Make Popular Movies, the leader of a film gang, shouting "Cinema Merde," which I think is going to be people all over the country are going to be shouting this term in the coming year, and I wouldn't be surprised if you get memed. How was it being such an integral part of probably one of the greatest films of the year?
I have not seen the film, so I have no idea what Connolly has come up with around it. I just know that in it.
Oh, you're in for a treat. You are well featured. It is one of the it's one of the better moments in the film. Of course, people who have also not had a chance to see Make Popular Movies yet might, if they're fans of this show and they have listened to all of our episodes, and particularly if they checked out the webpage for our intro episode, our Introduction to Your Hosts episode, we have there a video that I shot at Vulcan Video with Brian, and that you may recognize Jazmyne's voice from that. She was in the segment where we discussed all the great Hals in film, from Hal Ashby to Hal Needham to Hal Roach to Hal Hartley, and that was a good time. R.I.P. Vulcan Video, but I'm glad to see that so many of the Vulcan Video folks, much like the cast of Foxfire, have gone on to even greater things, like yourself at the Austin Film Society. Is there anything else that people should know about you, or people can find you or your work in any ways?
I am all over. So I recently contributed to a book on Weird Wednesday, the history of Weird Wednesday, written by my colleague, my associate, Lars Nilsson. I'm writing some things and contributing elsewhere to some projects that should be released within the coming year or so. So I'm around, that's for sure.
And you can be found at the Austin Film Society.
Yes. Every week, every weekend, at the Austin Film Society, particularly hosting Lates.
And what is the Lates series about?
Lates is basically cult films for the art house crowd. So things like On the Silver Globe, Space is a Place, so basically any sort of weird, out there, surreal kind of entertainment for the late night audience. So if you want to see the Beast on a Friday night, that's where you show up.
May I suggest Mad Dog Time?
Yes.
It's actually, just check it out. This is what we do. I'd say 1/3 of the films we cover could fit into that description. So who knows? Maybe someday there's a World Is Wrong Lates collaboration.
Maybe
the November Men, maybe Don's Plum.
Oof.
I know it's difficult. It is difficult, but we got to look into the nightmare of that of that film to understand this time. Also, one of the rare Jenny Lewis performances. But I assume you haven't. But I encourage you to check out our episode about Don's Plum, where we talk with the writer producer, and you'd be like, writer, that film was totally improvised. Well, they improvised it in rehearsals, and there was a writer involved in that process. Yeah, it's not a pleasant film. Not as fun to hang out with those guys. I would much rather hang out with the women from Foxfire than with those guys, even though I would be more welcome with them, probably, until I started talking, and then they would have treated me like they treated everyone else. Anyway, I'm rambling, but it's been fun, and I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about more of these films. I know you recommended Gun Crazy? Yes. That's another film we could do.
Awesome. I'd love to talk about it. Gun Crazy, anything else on that list, it would be a joy.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall,
examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
Hey, this is an ad. Don't fast forward. Be over in a second. Are you obsessed with a sports team, a band, or even collecting chia pets? Then listen to my new podcast, Rep Your Squad, on Paper House Network, where I dive into what drives people crazy. So if you're a 40-year-old man with a stamp collection, or a middle-aged woman who loves the Spice Girls, that's cool. We don't judge here on Rep Your Squad with me, Chris Scopo. See? It's over.
Dear listener, if you are just discovering our podcast, you can find all of our episodes on our website at theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can also write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com or follow us on Instagram at theworldiswrongpodcast. And now, back to the show.
That's good. That was great.
Well, I thought so too. I learned a lot. In the interview.
I too am guilty of not seeing this movie or other movies like it in the 90s because I was a teenage boy in the 90s, so I kind of like the idea of a movie with just a bunch of ladies in it.
You almost said girls. You almost said girls. You were a kid.
Ladies.
You were a boy then. But you said you almost said girls. I heard it. We all heard it. Let's just be honest.
These are women. They were older than me.
They're teenagers. They're girls.
I never saw any of the angsty girl stuff. I kind of avoided it intentionally because I was like, and I grew up with two brothers. I had no sisters. So as a dumb teenage boy, I never saw this movie. I never saw The Craft. I never saw any of the Drew Barrymore movies where she's... wiling out. I just never.
You ever see Little Witches?
Is that a thing? I've never heard of that. It's not a movie.
That's a real movie. I had a song.
Little Witches?
Little Witches. It's a Craft ripoff.
Oh,
from
great.
Producer Don Borchers of Two Moon Junction and Far From Home.
Oh, nice. I love Two Moon Junction.
Yeah.
Steamy. But yeah, no, I didn't watch these movies, So now I think it's great that it's time to pay attention because I feel this one I never heard of until you did this episode. I never heard of Foxfire, despite the star power behind it. Like Jenny Lewis, Angelina Jolie. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I also have never read a Joyce Carol Oates novel. Have you?
No, you bastard. You had to out me. No.
Yeah, never did it.
Maybe we should.
What are the other big I know the name, and I'm assuming other books of hers got made into movies. What were the big Joyce Carol Oates books? I have no idea.
Well, let's see. Blonde Is that the one that they're currently making into a? I think they're making.
Is that the Marilyn Monroe?
Marilyn Monroe.
Thing? Yeah. Yes.
Wow. You know, Joyce Carol Oates wrote a whole lot of books. I've read as many of hers as I have read Philip Roth, which is to say, none.
0.
But I hear
really?
about them all the time. No, have I never read a Philip Roth? I
really
started
never read
reading
The Human Stain or anything.
I listened to The Human Stain as a book on tape. I've listened to several of his books on tape when I was traveling with or actually traveling as a solo artist because the band wouldn't let me listen to him. But I should probably listen to more Joyce Carol Oates when I'm driving up and down the coast. Yeah.
And then I'm guessing it's because of the Pacific Northwesty connection to this movie, but there's 2 people from Twin Peaks in this movie. Chris Mulkey and Richard Beymer. Yeah. So I wonder if it's the same casting person or those guys just live kind of in.
Well, the casting person was Mally Finn, whose daughter is a big casting director now, and she cast me in The Prom with Jennifer Jason Leigh, and that meant she also cast Cole Hauser.
Yeah.
I felt Mally Finn had her
she
finger
knows.
on the pulse of something around then, and I said it in the conversation with Jazmyne, but watching it, that was what really struck me. Was like, oh my God, this film, the casting in this film is so phenomenal. There's this whole thing in the Oscars, like they're removing or downplaying some categories, behind the scenes categories. And on the other hand, I've been seeing a lot of people talking about how we should expand the Oscars, and casting definitely is something that, it's so invisible unless it becomes visible. And it's just because I have the connection with this casting director that I sort of was aware while I was watching it. Oh, someone assembled this cast. Yeah. And left me out of it, which is really pissing me off. No.
But how old were you in 96 or
Yeah, I wasn't.
You were too old to be high school. But
I know.
Or even Hollywood high school. You're too old.
You're right.
And, like, who are you going to be in there? Do you want to be like
Maddie? I could have been Maddie.
Yeah. Okay.
You didn't watch the film. Maddie's a girl who's the protagonist. No. It's okay. It's fine. It's funny. Angelina Jolie has a similar kind of reveal for her character as my character in my episode of Good Morning, Miss Bliss. So that's as much as I need. I'm fine. We both wore black and walked into a classroom and scared everybody. So I did not set a mouse free. Or not a mouse, a frog. She set a frog free because she is a princess, which is not at all the kind of film she is in. Anyway, and then what did you think about how in the middle, like I did not notice it at all.
I love it that you're like, wait a minute, I know this person who made this movie. That's hilarious. Because it's funny because you always do so much prep and so much research before any episode. So it's funny that you just totally missed that you had worked with Annette Haywood-Carter before on Nightmare 4 because she was the script supervisor, right?
Yeah, and I had actually looked at a lot of her. I looked at her IMDb credits for script supervising, and saw how it basically stopped right when she got this, and it made me think of, script supervisors. That's a behind the line thing that I know is really important, incredibly valuable as an actor. Because a lot of times you're shooting part of a scene one day and then part of a scene the other day, or you're walking in one door one day and you're walking in the door the next day. And the person who takes the notes and makes sure that, okay, when you walked through that door, you had your hand in your right pocket, or you were holding this thing in your left hand, and you don't want to walk through the door holding it in your right hand. And the script supervisor is often the one who's noting that and communicating that to the actors. So you have a very direct interaction with that person. And on a film like Nightmare on Elm Street, where you're doing you're shooting a lot of it out of sequence because of stunts and multiple sets working at once.
Facts and all that, yeah.
Yeah, and young actors who don't have a lot of. So her job on the film, since then I've had memories come back about how much she helped me as an actor, which makes me feel bad that then I came into the episode kind of hot, being critical of a film that Jazmyne helped me to appreciate a lot more. But damn, Savannah is tough. I'm sorry. It's beautiful. It's it's a mess. I can't. It hurts. Well, you should watch it. We should do it. We should watch it. We should do an episode about help me with this film, because I can't.
But she was script supervisor on a lot of big stuff. She did Driving Miss Daisy, Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger.
Rennie Harlan. That's Rennie. She followed.
Yeah,
Rennie.
she said Rennie Harlan. Yeah. Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, like all Rennie Harlan stuff. But then she did the Flintstones, the big Flintstones movie, Casper, at Play in the Fields of the Lord, the 1992 version of Mice and Men. I believe, is that the one with Gary Sinise and John Malkovich, I'm guessing? That seems right. The Wrong Guys, the Louis Anderson movie. Big movies to me. Yeah. And it's really cool that, like, it's just cool to see somebody kind of work in this area and be able to leap from that to director. You know, like, it really is the year after. Like, Casper was 95 and then Foxfire's 96. So it's cool that it's not like, because there's always this sort of, like, it seems so hard to crack, like, how do you become a director? How do you direct in Hollywood? And usually what you think it is like, oh, you make a short film and it plays festivals, and you make a smaller film, and then eventually you're a director, or maybe you're a second unit director. But, like, to go from script supervisor to director is great. I think that's amazing. Very cool.
Actually, that film launched then at least two consequential women directors. The producer, Rachel Talalay, on Nightmare 4, I think she may have started as a script supervisor, or she started very below the line on Nightmare 1 or 2 and worked her way up to producer in 4. And I believe, did she direct Nightmare 5?
Who?
She directed Rachel Talalay. She shot.
No.
She was the director of Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. And she's also done a lot of she did a bunch of episodes of Sherlock. She's done a lot of TV, like very high quality, a lot of British TV. And so another way that Nightmare 4 elevated women. Thank you very much. I will accept my awards. No.
Yeah, because she directed Tank Girl, kind of the other sort of like Riot Girl Hollywood movie of the mid-90s.
Yes.
Yeah, that was 95, so right the year before this. So
I remember she was a Elvis Costello fan. That's how we bonded.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. So, as well as not being aware of Annette Haywood-Carter being someone who I actually knew, I probably never called her Annette Haywood-Carter, but I do remember Annette. But beyond that, I have there's a few corrections that need to be made. Shame on me. I've made a few errors.
All right, let's hear it.
First of all, as Wendell B. Harris Jr. was so nice to spend so much time talking with me, it's incredibly rude that I keep saying that his film won the grand jury prize at the festival in 1989, when in fact it was 1990. He spent a lot of his career trying to correct this. Not for me. So I'm repeating misinformation that I received from people who are putting out maybe disinformation, possibly malinformation. I don't know. But whatever it was,
It's 89 was Sex, Lies, and Videotape, right? That's the year that won. Yes. Okay. Okay. It makes sense now.
And going back to episode 70.
Whoa, we're going back.
2 episodes ago. 3, many, actually, yeah, well, whatever. I don't know how many, where we're at, because we're recording this well into our schedule. But back on episode 70, Cosmic Slop, I mistakenly, in reference to Brown Bunny. Wait a second. Was it in? It was either in Cosmic Slop or Good Luck, Miss Wyckoff. We may need a correction for this correction.
For the correction.
But at least in the last couple of episodes, there was a point where we were talking about Brown Bunny, and I said, well, what if we saw it from Cheryl Ladd's point of view? Of course, Cheryl Ladd's point of view on Brown Bunny would be the same point of view of all of us as viewers, because she wasn't in Brown Bunny. Cheryl Teagues was in Brown Bunny. They both were are
both
very
pretty ladies of the 70s.
Women who held a very powerful sway over my young mind, as feverish as it was in those young days. And I got my Cheryls mixed up. But yes, Cheryl Teagues is the breakout star of Brown Bunny, and Cheryl Ladd is the breakout star of my heart in the early 80s.
Maybe you could do a weird science thing where you could put both women together. Like,
no, why would I do? No,
if you were
no,
15,
no,
like in the 80s, and you could have made
no,
your two Cheryls into one person.
No, Jordan Ladd is a friend of mine. I don't want to do anything to mess with her wonderful and fully integral mother. And then probably most egregiously of all, I really can't even. I'm at a loss for words as to how to apologize for this oversight, because it was so needed during our episode about Good Luck, Miss Wyckoff. When we were discussing the career of Marvin J. Chomsky, of course, we focused on Holocaust and roots, but we forgot to mention that he also is the director of Evel Knievel from 1971.
Which, is that the one you used the song for in The Brown Bunny?
Yes.
Man, yeah.
And a movie that I feel like we have to do now, because
keeps coming back. Like Evel Knievel keeps rising up to come back.
Thinking of Evel Knievel in the context of Good Luck, Miss Wyckoff, Roots, and Holocaust. There's something that I feel like there's unexplored depths in the film Evel Knievel. So
think how much more happier we would have been if we ended Wyckoff's episode just listening to playing out with that song, the Evel Knievel theme song. Then we would have left on a high, as opposed to a bummer.
I know.
Evel Knievel, Evel Knievel. So good. So you should end this episode again with that. Such as beer. Or going away. It has nothing to do with it at all, but who cares?
No. Let's stick. We're gonna go.
Listen to our. Did we play it on the Brown Bunny episode? I think it's in there.
Yeah, we did.
Listen to that. You'll hear one of the great songs of cinema.
Goes with the film. So good, so bad. Like it is a so bad it's good movie, and we don't really do that. But sometimes, when it hits such a fever pitch of that, it flips over to actually just being good again.
Yeah.
So that's the trick that Beyond the Valley of the Dolls pulled. That it was the first time I'd ever seen a movie do that, and since then I've been I hunger for those moments where you watch something and it really goes full bore on its tone in a way that. That just is terrible, but it's a symphony of terrible, which becomes genius. So, anyway, so I apologize for all of those, and I will continue to endeavor to be correct, and when I am incorrect, to correct myself as much as I correct others, which is, one of the annoying things about being my friend.
All the time.
Right, Brian? Yeah. So where are we at now in this thing? Okay. We here's an exciting thing, Brian. In the last couple weeks, I've noticed that we have had an uptick of listeners in Australia. In fact, last week we had more listeners in Australia than we have in our home country of the United States of America. And so So it's very exciting to know that there are some folks in New South Wales, I believe, listening to The World Is Wrong. And welcome to our world. And we'd love to hear from you. If you're, I wonder if it's just like two roommates who have just downloaded everything.
I want to hear from those two roommates.
Yeah.
Reach out to us, two guys, or classroom, or,
Yeah. What explains this?
Work.
Yeah. Some big Paperboy fans. Or maybe Wendell B. Harris fans. I don't know. Maybe Wendell B. Harris Jr. has a nice little Australian following.
Well, I hope they enjoyed our In the Cut episode, the one Australian filmmaker we've done so far, Jane Campion.
Is that really the only one?
That's it.
Well, I bet they're sick of having her be their only one.
We'll do a Paul Hogan movie,
we've
guys,
done.
Don't worry.
We've done George Miller. We did we talked about George Miller a lot during the Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, but we didn't really do an episode about a movie he made yet. Which would of course
Nicole
be
Kidman
Big
is a
Two,
movie
Big
he
in the
made.
City. Yeah, that's true. He made the movie that is Nicole Kidman. Yes. And I guess Nicole Kidman counts, of course, but not a filmmaker, an actress. But we did a whole month.
Producer.
Yeah.
She's a filmmaker. I would say once you're that much of a star and you're producing your own stuff,
you make the movie. Yeah.
You're a filmmaker. You hire the director, so you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome. I'm not going to attempt an Australian accent, and I hope you appreciate it.
Well, I will, and you can not appreciate it. Good day, mates.
Demonstration of why I didn't do that. Okay. But, it's you can be forgiven for being so enthusiastic and on this day because the week we're recording this, the beginning of March, you've just returned from the world premiere of your film Make Popular Movies, at which you broke many hearts by walking away with all of the awards from the Prison City Film Festival.
Yeah.
Prison City Film Festival.
Exciting.
Not a made-up name.
Real
thing.
Yeah.
A real thing. What made you choose the Prison City Film Festival as your premiere premiere screening of your debut feature?
I wanted to show it in Texas because it's where it was made and it's where I live. And just when I was going through looking at festivals, it just looked really cool. It's only been around for 5 years. I think this was the 5th year. And just like looking at pictures and looking how fun it was, and it's in a cool old historic theater. And I'm like, perfect. It's not too far from Austin. Let's go. Let's do it. And so, we had the premiere, and it was great. It went really well. And then won 3 awards. Won Best U.S. Narrative Feature, Best Comedy, and Best Director. And there was a lot of good movies at the festival, so it really was an honor to win those 3. And now I can say I'm an award-winning filmmaker, so I can rub that in everyone's face for the rest of my life.
Yeah, if I were you, I don't know I'd say go for it, but I would. Why you bury the lead? You start with I won Best Director at the Prison City Film Festival.
Yeah,
motherfuckers.
And you know who never won Best Director at the Oscars? Orson Welles. Just saying.
So you're nothing like Orson Welles.
Yeah, I'm gonna make Mank 2.
Well, in a way, wait a second. Yeah. In a way, you are like Orson Welles in that when you were at the peak of your creative and at the peak of your power in the Austin film scene, you recognized a plucky young kid like your own Peter Bogdanovich, who you welcomed into your world, put in your movie, Make Popular Movies, in a very memeable role. Yeah. And then she has gone on to, obviously to overshadow you and become basically your boss at the Austin Film Society.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Not just the boss, but like a celebrity, a star, a leader of culture, filling rooms and minds. and you're left to wonder, why didn't she come to even come to the premiere of Make Popular Movies? Because she's too big for you now. She's out trying to,
Yeah.
Luckily, she's not hooking up with Sybil Shepherd, as far as I know. But who knows? I hope things go well for her in all of her endeavors. But the point is that in that sense, you are like Orson Welles, is that you assisted a rising star in Jazmyne Moreno.
I don't know if Jazmyne wants to be an actress, but she's a very good one, and she's in my movie for about 30 seconds, but it's a great 30 seconds. And she will be in the next movie for at least 30 seconds. I'm just going to keep putting her in if she'll let me.
Cinema Merd. I'm going to be saying that. It's going to become one of my quotes that I say as a non sequitur in conversations, and people are just left not knowing what I'm talking about.
Yeah, until they see my movie at some local shindig.
Yeah, well, because it's the beginning of the age of Golson. So get ready, folks. Get ready.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot to Jazmyne Moreno for being a part of this. Thank you, Brian, for introducing her to me. And thank you all for, listening to this podcast, because I figure if you're hearing me say this, then you have. And if you'd like to give us your thoughts and your concerns, if you want to, help us with any corrections, maybe suggest a Joyce Carol Oates novel that we should check out, or more than one, we'll read those on the show. You can reach out to us. No, we're not going to read the book on the show. We'll read your letter on the show about the book. Thank you for laughing as a corrective to my confusing speech. And of course, coming up next week, it's the biggest night. It's the biggest night in cinema. It's the Oscars. Yes. Our next episode is going to be the Oscars, where we celebrate films that got no nominations. 0 nominations. That's what we call them, our nominees. And we're going to have some guests. Don't know all of the guests that are going to be there, but we'll definitely have the return of AJ Gonzalez and Jen Brown to share their nominees. And of course, you and I have been working our lists feverishly.
Yep.
And so the Oscars are coming. Anything, are you excited? Or do you know what you're going to wear?
I'm going to wear, I got a nice, I learned how to tie a bow tie now. Like, I taught myself last week, so I'm going to tie a bow tie for the Oscars. You won't be able to see it, but you'll know that my neck will be a little tight.
But you'll be wearing no shirt.
And no pants. There's only a bow tie. It's like total Chippendales look is what I'm going.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm really sweating these. I don't know why, because, I know I'm saying it's the biggest night of the year, but we probably shouldn't be sweating our nominees as much as I am. But there are some major battles in my mind, particularly in the acting, actually in all categories.
Maybe there'll be a tie, a rare tie.
I feel like I want to do a World is Wrong about my own nominees. Like everyone that I choose, I want to boo and protest and say, no, but the runner-up is the one we really should have been celebrating.
Yeah. Well.
It's the inside of my mind, Brian. If you'd like to get in touch with us with any communication, you can write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You don't do it enough. I'm sorry, the Jewish mother in me comes out. You don't ever write, and it makes me so sad. It's okay. I know you're very busy, but we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to just sort of creepily watch us from the corner, you can do that on Instagram at The World Is Wrong Podcast. And you can find us on Twitter at World Is Wrong Pod. And there's a page devoted to every one of these episodes on our website, www.theworldiswrongpodcast.com. Yeah. And we didn't mention it, but you can always find Brian's other podcast, The Director's Wall, where you can find that wherever you find your podcasts, and they're currently looking at the films of Francis Ford Coppola. Mm-hmm. You can find my other podcast, The Radio 8 Ball Show at www.the-radio-8-ball-show or www.radio8ball.com, all one word with the number 8 in the middle. And beyond that, I hope that you find your own personal legs wherever you are, even if you are your own legs. And of course, that's a reference to the character from the film. Of course, you are your own legs. Who else's legs would you be? Anyway, with that said, just remember that wherever you are, the world is wrong, and it's probably wrong about you.
How do you know if a guy's good in bed? By how many times he makes me come.
Do you wanna come inside my house? Do you wanna show me things I've never seen before? I don't wanna tie you down, I just wanna tie you up. Do you wanna come inside my house? I wrote that myself. What do you think?
I think you need to get laid.
Radio 8 Ball.
Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting the World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8 Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers, from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8 Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store.
Show.